name's Julie Henry. It's great to be with you today. I am from the Pulse team, which is a consulting company that I started working with organizations in sustainability and conservation. But I'm a longtime educator. I've run the education division here at Moat. I work with the Florida Aquarium now on lots of climate change projects that Debbie will tell you about this afternoon. So I get where you're coming from. And I want to talk about something that maybe is considered the dark side sometimes, which is the digital realm. And I want to give you some encouragement, some tips, some advice on how to make this more manageable, more navigable, and more so that you can set some business goals with it and get some results from what you're trying to do. Because how many of you have ever felt overwhelmed with all of the digital options out there? Okay, yes, me too. How many of you are actively involved with your website, have some responsibility for it? Okay, some. All right, how many of you have responsibility for social media channels? Okay. How many of you are active on social media personally? All right, how many of you personally have a website? Okay, good. So it's smattering here. Things that I'm going to share with you today are lessons learned from an associate that works with us as well, and she works professionally in social media marketing. So her clients have millions and millions of dollars. When Bacardi or Universal Studios comes up to you and says, we want to do a social media campaign, sky's the limit. Can you imagine having a $10 million budget to do something like that? And all the things you could do for environmental education. The good thing is you take all those best practices, because for $10 million you make a lot of mistakes, because you can afford to make them. So I'm going to share with you the lessons from $10 million worth of mistakes. So this is my contact information. I'd love to keep in touch and see what you're up to as we go along here. I want to start with websites. So when you look at this website, what are they trying to get you to do? Click here for what? The annual report. Can anybody tell what website this is? Live Strong. Okay, so Lance Armstrong's foundation, Live Strong. When you go to the website, this is the first thing you see. Click here for our 2012 annual report. Now there are some things in website terms we call this below the fold. So if you're looking at your computer and you have to scroll, right, don't put stuff down there that you want people to see. It's called below the fold. Now that changes, of course, with mobile devices, and there's something called responsive design. Your website is changing, etc. But above the fold, this is called a call to action. So the first thing that I want to leave you with is your website needs to have a call to action. People need to know what to do on your website. You have to show them, because they're not there long enough to figure it out on their own. All right? Let me show you another website. What do they want you to do here? Get started. What is this website? Daily Mile. So what do you think that is? Exercise, workouts. Okay, so most of us or all of us are somehow educators or connected with the environmental education profession. So a lot of us get really passionately attached to wanting people to care as much as we do about the environment. But we know from practicing education for a long time that people don't have to care as much as we do in order to act, right? A lot of times we just need to get them to act. So I like to pull examples from the exercise realm. Okay, I'm wearing this fancy little Jawbone Up here. If anybody ever uses a Fitbit or a Jawbone Up, there's a lot of community now that they're engaging people to make commitments to exercise. How many of you have ever made a decision contrary to what you knew you should do about exercise or diet? Anybody ever done that? Yeah. I'm going to go running in the morning, so I will absolutely go to bed at 9 o'clock. Not have that second glass of wine. Anybody ever happened? Yeah, okay. So, marathon training. I need to actually run in the morning. I have 26.2 miles that are staring at me in the face. That is a huge motivation. Doesn't mean I'm always going to follow through. So, when you're looking at good examples of how to get people motivated for action in the environmental education realm, online, look to some websites and social media from the exercise realm, because there's some innovative ways that they are getting people engaged, motivated, supporting each other. When I plug this little thing in, this little bracelet thing into my phone, it logs how many steps that I've taken that day. It connects me to 5 other people so I can see how many steps they've taken. That's a lot of motivation because one of them's my brother and I want to beat him. Okay? So, call to action and look for some examples outside of the field. All right, let's go to another website. What are you supposed to do? Browse. Yes. I can call the National Human Educators Association out on the carpet because they're one of my clients and we're working on this issue. Because you get to this website and you have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do. Now, is there a lot of information? Yeah. How many of you have ever said yourself or heard the phrase, let's just put it on the website? Anybody ever done that? And then you hear the defense. Well, what do you mean? You didn't know that? It's on the website. I just heard that yesterday at my daughter's school. What do you mean? There's a book fair next week. It's on the website. I didn't check the web. Well, we put it on Facebook. I didn't see Facebook either. Okay, the proactive side of communicating information is lagging behind because we just put it on the website. And gone are the days that funding agencies are funding websites. Okay, 20 years ago we used to make flyers. We get grants and we make flyers and we invite a bunch of people to a workshop, done. 10 years ago we said on every grant, well, we're just going to make a website. People used to fund that. Now, funders are getting savvy. We're not just going to fund another website. Unless you have a reason to have a website, you're going to tell people what you want to do or what you want them to do when they get to that website, and there's some sort of trackable plan behind it. That's the thing about everything online. Well, I shouldn't say everything, because Facebook doesn't play nice. But 90% of things online, you can get data. There's great trackable data. The project that we're working with Florida Aquarium, we're getting trackable data to give to NOAA about how people are engaging. That's fantastic. So gone are the days where you can just throw a bunch of things online and hope people figure it out. Okay, here's another example. Do you know what you're supposed to do here? Search. Yep. So again, they've taken you out. You can't even tell what this is, really, when you first look at it. Okay? It doesn't really reveal its personality up in front here. Okay, how about this one? Create a resume. So colors are leading you there. Look at all these nice little arrows because we want to give people a lot of options, right? We want them to share. We want them to do some things. But at the end of the day, we want them to, what? Create a resume. We want them to do an action. And then we're reminding them it's free. You can print it. You can have it in a hard copy. You can share it out. Or you can receive job offers, but focusing your attention. All right, one more example. This is actually an award-winning website. So this website, what are you supposed to do here? Connect with someone who what? Had cancer. Okay? So you're sharing your experience, you're connecting, you're making those personal connections. You can use your own social sites to connect, so Facebook, etc. But it's all about that meaningful connection. Now there's a lot of discussions, community, etc. There's a whole blog, but they're not trying to get you there yet. Because they first want to hook you to get engaged and keep you in that conversation. So for them, it's that personal connection. Now, I want you always thinking about, of course, from your organization standpoint, why do you want people to go to your website? Are you wanting them to just learn more? That's not a goal. Are you wanting them to come to something, register for something, sign up for something, connect with you to come back? There has to be a goal attached to that. All right, so let's look big pictures. We're going to talk about 3 steps for strategies to engage people online. The first one is setting goals. These goals should be directly tied back to why you do things as a business, as an organization. So thinking about who do you want to engage with? These are like your education goals, just applied to your online world. Who do you want to engage with? What do you want them to do? And why? Okay. Is your website, you want to talk about a beach cleanup that you're having? Is that going to be on the front of your website? So you want people to what? Sign up, come, follow it, even if they can't be a part of the beach cleanup? Are you also going to be live pinning on Pinterest the beach cleanup? How cool is that? Okay, there's some visual aspects of your job that relates very directly to things that you can put online. And thinking about that target audience. We'll get to that in a second. But then why? How does that relate back to your organizational goals? If they engage with you in that beach cleanup, do you want them to share it out on their social networks? Because then you're creating that organic word of mouth anyway. It cuts down on things you have to do later. Right? So give me an example of something that you're reaching out to with people and trying to engage them using your website. What's an example?
Who, for me, was I want to reach out to our educators, to our children, and the people who are teaching our kids in our county. What I want them to do is invite me into your school for 45 minutes. Let me talk to your first graders, second graders, K through 5. And why? Because knowledge is power. Our biggest problem is the backyard mosquito, and I find that most adults reject this information, but when their kids take it home, it's a bigger deal. And that's why I want to reach out to the kids.
Okay, good. So let's translate that into how you're communicating online. You want to reach out to educators, K-12?
K-5.
K-5. And when they get to your website, you want them to invite you to come to their school, but are they clicking through and they're calling you? Are they emailing you? Are they registering? What is the mechanism online?
I'm finding that most educators prefer email.
Most educators.
5 seconds.
Most educators prefer email. So are you wanting them to give them your email on their website?
Yeah.
How easy is that? Are you finding them they're giving their email up easily?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then your call to action button on your website is all about give me your email. And now think of all the incentives that you could give them to give your email or give them your email. You know what I'm saying? Give you their email. Thank you. See, I need lunch too. Giving things for free out, following up with, it's not enough to just sign up for a newsletter anymore. People aren't. And but you're not giving, but just because they give you their email, what's that direct, instantaneous reinforcement at that point? Do you see what I'm saying? Because giving you their email, there's still a lot of steps that has to happen before you come to their school. But if you keep their emails, even if they never invite you, you still got an audience there. Anybody else have another example?
What's an example of an incentive?
Okay, what's an example? I have a couple in mind, but let me ask you, what's an example of incentive to give up somebody's email? Because emails are really difficult. And I'll tell you this, in the social media marketing world, with all the advancements happening in social media, the number one thing that it's all tied back to still is email. So remember that when you're getting out there, getting somebody's email is like gold. So how do you get emails from people? What would be an incentive for them to give you their email through your website? Right.
That awesome little checkbox at the bottom that says they won't give it out to a bunch of other people who don't get the mail.
Okay, so a box that says that you're not going to spam them. Okay. What else? What else do you give them? What else could you give them? Yeah.
In her case, maybe one of these little songs or some picture that would be appropriate for this grade level.
Okay, so maybe a song or a picture would be appropriate. How about, good.
Access to opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay, access to opportunities you wouldn't have otherwise. How about a behind-the-scenes video that's somewhere stored privately on YouTube? It's a link to a behind-the-scenes video on how you actually prepare for mosquito control, or something that they can't see unless they were to go with you on your job. Or it's that insider's peek that you can give them. The great thing about your work is everything you're doing is visual and exciting to people. It's not like we're trying to get people to engage with you and you are a pest control company for cockroaches in the middle of the state. And people are not curious about it at all. People are curious about what you do because it affects their lives and they live by the ocean, etc., or in that estuary. Okay? Let's go on to step 2. So now we're going to target your audience. First you set your goals, measurable goals, like we know, and then target your audience. Now here's the key. Educators or adults or whoever that audience is that you target, they're already active online. So now you've set your website. Now you're going to go try to recruit people to your website. So the key is to figure out where they are, where they're talking already. Social. they are it's very transparent. There's lots of data to figure out where they are. Here is an example. This is just looking at ages, looking at Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. So I pulled not the most popular channels. We're not just talking about Facebook and Twitter, but as you notice, we are talking about Twitter. We're not talking about Facebook and LinkedIn, some more generalized social channels. But Twitter, the majority of Twitter are 18 to 29-year-olds, still got some 30 to 49-year-olds, and not as many 50 to 64-year-olds are on Twitter. Okay? Then you go over to Instagram, you're still pulling a young audience, 18 to 29, less for the 39 and 40-year-olds, but look at the 50 and above, it drops even more significantly than it did for Twitter. Pinterest, 18 to 29, 30 to 49, and almost the same, 50 to 64. So you've got a bigger spread over Pinterest. So when you're looking to reach out to your audience, the first thing you're going to do is jump on your demographics that you can research about these social media channels to figure out where they are. Okay, let me show you another one. All right, here we can pull in some Facebook and LinkedIn. So Facebook, the average age of a Facebook user is 40 years old. Okay, maybe not what you're expecting. But a lot of the teens and tweens are getting off Facebook now because their parents are on Facebook. Okay? So they're getting on Twitter. But if you're trying to do a high school program, or you're trying to reach out to high school, perhaps Facebook is not the area that you want to reach out to, unless it's a high school class, and that's a whole different audience. Okay? 60% female, 40% male for Twitter. For Facebook. Twitter, the average age is 37.3. It drops a little bit. But it's interesting, that third bullet point, urban dwellers, more likely than both suburban and rural residents to use Twitter. So that's interesting if you're looking at trying to target people in cities. All right? Pinterest. Look at the gender breakdown in Pinterest. 79% female, 21% male. I do not fit that demographic. Hate Pinterest. It is way too right-brained for me. I am left-brained, and everything on Pinterest is not lined up. Drives me crazy. However, I can embrace it because I know that that is a very, very relevant social channel right now. Right now, Pinterest pages and Google get along fantastic. I don't really know why. And some of the practitioners, we don't really understand the back end yet, but some organizations, their Pinterest page actually pops up before their organization page on search. Okay? And all of the live pinning that's starting to happen, like when I referenced live pinning a beach cleanup earlier, there are fashion shows being live pinned. There's so many cool examples from outside the field that you can then apply to what you're doing because what you're doing is so visual. So it really links into something like Pinterest. Instagram, here, women more likely to use this than men. Again, urban dwellers. And then LinkedIn. Many of you are active on LinkedIn. Okay. Don't forget LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really good for establishing just professional reputation that then ties back into your organization. Okay. So the last part about targeting your audience is I want you to think about the 4 C's of social media. Okay, the first thing that you have to have is content. You have content. You have a lot that you're doing and a lot to say about things that is happening. This is not your problem. Okay? Companies have to invent this, create this sometimes. You don't. The next thing you need is you need to be engaged in conversations. So that's something that we often are making mistakes at. We don't need to talk at people. They want to talk with you and get to know you. Keeping that conversation going is what's going to keep them engaged in what you're doing. Because you want to build a community. You've got the content, you start talking in conversations, you invite people to co-create. People are going to co-create those conversations. They're going to build your community. The great thing about community is you're going to have supporters and you're going to have detractors. What are the detractors called? What do we call them? Anybody know? Anybody ever heard the word trolls? Okay. Here's the scary thing. I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. There are actually people paid now to be professional trolls, which means they go to websites and they make a lot of noise. Climate change? Well, climate change isn't real. Blah, 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 blah. Whether or not they believe it, they're getting paid to say it. So now, I'm raising a 4 and 5-year-old in a world in which being on reality TV and a paid troll are viable careers, which is very scary to me. So keep this in mind. But here's the thing about community. As you nurture this community, your community will support you. So you can start to venture out into some of these areas, like climate change. I don't know how some of you may have some parameters around what you can say about climate change and what you can't, etc. But online, it's a little bit different because it's a little more fluid. It's not like you're printing something. It does live forever online. But as you start to talk about some things and people start to criticize you, your supporters are going to be vocal as well. So you don't have to be policing as much as you may think in some other venues. And then here's the last one, connections. So this all translates down into your connections. Okay? All right, let's go to step 3. Step 3 is interact. So you've got your website, your call to action. You've reached out to these folks. These are your 3 keywords around interact that I want you to remember. You've engaged them. You're going to motivate them to do whatever you're trying to get them to do. And then you're going to drive traffic. And that traffic may be right back to your website, primarily, but it also may be traffic into something you're physically doing, like a program. But you've got to go through those frames first. Okay? So, from the big picture, talking about all these strategies, starting to navigate a way, making these strategies, so as you're engaging in these social media channels, you know what you're doing when, you're biting off enough that you can chew about a website. Here is your pathway forward. These are my 5 tips to you. The first is to find 3 excellent websites from outside your field. And I'll broaden that. Could be websites, it could be a Twitter channel that you love. My favorite is I love Bronx Zoo's Cobra. It's at Bronx Zoo's Cobra. Do you remember when the cobra escaped a couple years ago from the Bronx Zoo? Someone created this handle. It was not the staff at the Bronx Zoo, but they are so funny. And they teach great things. It's accurate. Some of the things, it's good that it doesn't come from the zoo because they make funny remarks. But if you can be funny in 140 characters, I'll give you a lot of credit. So I love looking, that's still kind of within the field, but Starbucks is a good example. Dunkin' Donuts has a great Facebook page. So take some time and look outside the field and find your best practices that can inform what you're doing. The second is decide on that call to action. Decide it, own it, change it later if you need to, but be direct about what you want people to do. Number 3, commit to fewer social media channels so you can do them better. That's a mantra I've had to talk to educators a lot about is we're educators, we're used to multitasking, we're used to being able to talk to all these audiences at the same time. You're good at that. You can talk to kindergartners, you can talk to teachers, you can talk to seniors, you can talk to everybody because you shift. You're exhausted at the end of the day. And it's not as effective on social media channels because remember, you need to continue that engagement. It's not just a one-shot deal. So I'm going to ask you to go back and really critically evaluate what you're doing on social media and cut off something. Take a whole channel away, decide to do something less. If there's only one channel that makes sense, or if you are only really good at Pinterest and that you're challenged with that, do that first. Just do it well and then go on to the next thing. Continue the conversation, so keep talking with them and track your efforts and measure. This is really critical because funding agencies are starting to look at this. Number 2 is within your own organization, they may come back to you and say, why are you spending all this time on these social media channels? I don't see the relevancy. If you have data to back it up, you can meet that challenge. And the other thing is you can then measure your own effectiveness, figuring out how you're moving forward. So, a lot of information in 30 minutes. I'd like to take the last 5 or 7 minutes here and just open it up for questions. Yes? Yes.
How do you do that?
How do you do the Prezi?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that if your left brain is going to drive you crazy as well, because it took me a long time. You basically get on Prezi.com, and you have to pay, I think it's $40 a year for a subscription, but honestly the easiest way for me is I Googled on YouTube how to do a Prezi, and that's what happened.
There's a free
But
version also.
there's a free version as well. There might be a free version for nonprofits, or
No, it's free.
oh man, why did I pay $40?
Oh,
Okay. Okay. There's a free version as well. Yeah. And so the thing about YouTube, since we mentioned YouTube, do you know that YouTube is the #2 searched? It's not necessarily an engine, but people go to Google and then they go to YouTube to find things. So if you're not on YouTube, it's one thing you should consider that people are looking for visuals. Yes?
Can you have 2 goals for your website, or does it really have to just be one?
Can you have 2 goals for your website, or can it really just be one? You can absolutely have multiple goals for your website, but you need to have a primary call to action to get them to do something, and then you have some sub-goals. And the other thing is to have your call to action on multiple pages, the same call to action. Yes, Carol?
Could you give me an example of tracking an effort?
Yeah, so Carol's asking if we can give an example of tracking an effort. Google Analytics is an easy and free way to do that, but as you're creating, it can go beyond just your website. So an example is this Facebook game that Debbie and I have worked on for climate change. We've put Google Analytics into that Facebook game to understand how people are clicking through and when they're getting a pledge. Another way for tracking is there's some free dashboards that I can email later, a list of free tools that you can really start following hashtags as an example and seeing across the board when hashtags are being used and how they're being used on different channels by who. That one's a hard one because I can even talk more, but it's just something that as a back end, it's open. It's an API. The API is open to get that access and data to report back into your funders or leadership.
What's this Facebook game you're talking about?
The Facebook game, I know Debbie's going to talk more about later today, but it's a game called Ocean and Climate Defender. It was from a NOAA grant to talk about how to motivate people to climate change action. So we went in the back door, as Henry was mentioning, and it's about how you make changes in your life for sustainability, and climate change is a back-end message. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. I'll be around at lunch if anyone has any more questions.